Well, 10:30. Got to leave fairly soon, go and get a plane. That's the downside sometimes when you're just enjoying a beer, isn't it? You've got to go and get a plane, but that's what you have to do if you're a beer hunter. Okay. Right now I am down home because I'm in my local Australia. A nice American IPA.
I think Michael Jackson did more for the brewing industry than anybody since Louis Pasteur.
It's good to see you again.
Michael is definitely smiling down on us.
I first met Michael Jackson in London in February of 2004.
This is Harrods coming up on your right. You spend all day in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially the food hall.
Oh.
Come back. And this venue is at least an hour away.
Michael was rushing to finish a story deadline, which gave me a little time to shoot some stuff around his office.
After having to wear a jacket and tie, I don't think it really exists anymore, does it?
See, and it might do in the corner.
Do you think it might?
Yeah.
I had actually
But
read that. Is that, you know, except for very few places.
I've been hassling to have a you know, to.
You know, this used to be a brewery, this building.
It did?
Yeah.
How long ago?
I don't know, but I think probably before the First World War.
We set off across town with Keith Johnson, Director of Marketing for the Rare Beer Club, for our first shoot.
Tell me a little bit about this.
So right now we're standing in the beer shop at number 14 Pitfield Street, London N1.
Ben Vinken, the publisher of Beer Passion magazine, joined us with some beers that he had brought in from Belgium.
Did you get that entry?
And we reckon we're probably the Great Britain's premier beer retailer at the moment of weird and interesting beers.
I brought some beers you probably don't have yet.
Oh yeah, go on then. It's quite possible because our sort of supply chain of beers from Belgium has become pretty boring, actually.
You're rolling, yeah. You know, I've often argued that Belgium treats beer more like wine than any other country does, and when you look at a champagne-style bottle like this is something you'll see an awful lot of in Belgium. And I'm very strongly in favour of this because I think that beer deserves to be treated with more respect. Beer is a drink of equal complexity and nobility to that of wine. So I'm always very pleased to see it presented properly.
I think we decided somewhere in the middle of that first tasting that I'm just going to let the camera run all the time.
I'm sure somebody's shadowing me. I get this awkward feeling.
The next morning, Michael showed us around his neighborhood of Hammersmith. He wanted to take us to one of his favorite local pubs called The Dove.
What do you want me to do, Jar?
Just say that this is the original main street of Hammersmith.
Okay, who am I looking at?
Hey.
Right, okay. But it's not like a piece to camera, it's like I'm chatting to you or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is the original main street of Hammersmith. And right here is one of London's most famous pubs. It's a pub called The Dove.
Say chat, chat.
Chat, chat, bagels and lox.
Again?
Yeah, and chocolate. I didn't have a chocolate. I didn't have bagels and lox either, but I wish I had.
Roll.
Okay. You know, I get an awful lot of visitors come to visit me in London. A lot of brewers from around the world, and a lot of writers too. And if it's not raining, I always bring them to this pub because it's a mere 10 minutes walk from my house, and here we are. You could be in the middle of the country here, right on the banks of the Thames. This pub has a deck where I'm sitting now, overlooking the river. It's the pub is called the Dove. So many historical aspects of this pub because it was built by the nephew of George III or something, or uncle of Queen Victoria. I forget exactly who it was. But yes, the guy who wrote Rule Britannia used to drink here, and you've got Hemingway was drank here, and Graham Greene drank here, and occasionally I'm here.
Michael James Jackson was born in the town of Wetherby in West Yorkshire on March 27, 1942. Michael's early years were hard. His twin brother died shortly after birth. His parents, recent immigrants from Lithuania, struggled to make ends meet. But when they moved from Leeds to nearby Huddersfield, they were able to send Michael to the King James Grammar School. It was here that Michael began to show a keen interest in cooking, rugby league, journalism, and the pub. At the age of 16, he quit school and set out to become a reporter, pitching his very first assignment to the local paper. It was a series called This Is Your Pub.
The editor apparently turned around to him and said, "Look, so how old are you?" Michael said, 16. And he said, "So you're asking me to support you breaking the law by going into a pub and ordering beer, and then you want to write a column about it, is that right?" And Michael said yes. And that column did run, and I think it ran for a number of years, until eventually one day the editor called Michael into the office and said, "Well, you've been running this column now for however many years it is, and we think you've pretty much covered every pub in the area and a good few beyond, and we've decided that we'd like to change the column from now on and do another column about your local church." And at that point Michael resigned.
Do you want a bit of sound on the main street thing? We're really running out of time.
Yeah, no, we're just here. We should get rolling.
I quickly learned that Michael is very personable and loves chatting with people, especially cabbies.
That'll be fine. Nobody's going to use this gate. So we're not average people because we like good beer.
That's right. Well, that's it. We're a dying breed.
Well, yeah. I mean, London cabbies are real people. So.
Well, no, a lot of them. I mean, my son, for instance, he won't drink draft beer. He'll only drink bottled. And that's Budweiser or Beck's.
Well, do you ever get to the United States?
No, my son's going in 3 weeks.
There are some great IPAs in the United States. Really great ones. Thanks so much for your time and your help today. That was great to meet you. There's my card. And if ever you're
the beer hunter,
if ever you happen to be in the area, drop by and we'll give you some unusual beer. In fact, let me see what I can find now. I'll just give you see if there's a nice hoppy beer we can give you.
Lovely.
Got a nice American IPA, Sockeye IPA. We've had it for a month or two, but I think we'll be all right. This is from Alaska. This is a stout this is from the town where Budweiser is made.
Oh yeah.
This is from a tiny little brewery. Well, I hope you enjoy those. Anyway.
That'll give me some nice drinking later on when I get home.
Enjoy it.
I'll cool it down a bit though.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your help.
Good luck.
Thank you.
At the end of a long day, we always retired to Michael's local pub, the Andover Arms.
I have in the past, but
Michael loved the pub. Next to journalism, it was a central feature of his life. His fondness for the pub led naturally to an interest in beer. As he traveled around the world reporting for various newspapers and magazines, he discovered a variety of beer beyond his wildest imagination. Not only would it shape his entire life and career, it would change the course of beer forever.
I first met him when he came to what we call the Old Brewery across town in the mid-'70s. I don't remember the exact year, but it would have been pre-'77, I guess. Not long before his very first book came out. And he interviewed me, asked me what I was up to, took some pictures, seemed very positive. We were very busy. I didn't really think much more about it. And I went to Interbrow in Munich. And at Interbrow, I went to the little book section. Well, here's a book about beer, the World Guide to Beer or something like that. Oh, I thought that's the guy who came to the brewery. And so I opened the book and I thought, gee, I wonder what he says about the United States. And I turned to the United States, thumbing through the pages and seeing these wonderful illustrations. I got to the United States and there we were. We thought the world would beat a path to our door, but it really hadn't happened yet. I saw that book and I realized it's going to happen. We've done it.
Michael's first book, called The English Pub, was published in 1976 by Quarto, a company he helped establish. But it was his second book, The World Guide to Beer, published in 1977, that solidified his fame as the top beer writer in the world. It was this book, more than anything else, that ignited the craft beer revolution. The book immediately found an eager audience in American home brewers.
My life changed in 1979 on my 30th birthday when a friend of mine gave me the World Guide to Beer. And it was through that book that I was introduced to a much, much wider world of beer, flavor, diversity, beer cultures.
I'm one of, I'm sure, hundreds, if not thousands of commercial brewers today that first cut their teeth on better beer by, reading the World Guide to Beer.
When that book came out and we read through that, we saw this whole world of possibilities, these different colors, these different flavors, these things that we'd never heard of.
Not only was it beautifully illustrated, it was the first time anyone had written about beer in terms of styles.
I think people don't know how huge his influence was. I mean, here's one example. Everything that we do here at World Beer Cup is based on the idea of beer styles. Michael invented the idea of beer styles.
It was interesting because people in Germany, for example, didn't have a resource to go to find out about their own beer. And until he wrote the book, The Beers of Belgium, people in Belgium didn't know what a wonderful resource they had in their own country among these small brewers that were producing a variety of different tastes.
That inspiration caused all these things to have, all these IPAs, double IPAs, all these sour barrel-aged beers, and then that influence is now going back to the mother countries and influencing them there. The base for that whole thing is this one book. It was called Michael Jackson's World Guide to Beer.
We wrapped up our tastings at the famous White Horse Pub on Parsons Green.
And just cherish it for a while. I mean, the kind of things that
one of the things that's made this club possible and a very desirable thing to do is a change in the whole nature of beer appreciation in recent years. There was a time when people didn't drink beer from out of their state or certainly out of their country. They didn't even know beers from other countries apart from a few very bland international mass market beers. And they certainly didn't know the individuals who brewed their beer. Now, just as there are celebrity chefs, there are celebrity brewers too.
By the end of those first few days, we had decided to do some sort of documentary about Michael. Rob Imeson, the founder of the Rare Beer Club, decided I should meet Michael in Philadelphia a month later for his annual Book and the Cook appearance. I happily agreed. Michael wasn't that well known in his own country, but in America, as I soon discovered, he was nothing less than a rock star.
Did he open your eyes to some new beers that you didn't know about?
Michael opened our eyes. Being with Michael was like a front row seat to the best events in the world. You know, we had the opportunity to be with this guy. He opened doors that we didn't even know existed.
TV, on me on TV. Michael. Oh, Chan, you can. That's good. That's what I want. We're opening the doors.
Michael Jackson.
Okay. Thanks very much, Bruce, and thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen, for that very pleasant welcome. You know, I used to, in the early days of coming here and coming to America, I used to say to people, I used to explain, yep, my name really is Michael Jackson, but I don't sing or dance, at least not until I've had a few more beers than I've had today. I haven't had a beer at all today. Had a good few single malt scotches last night, but...
The Book and the Cook was an epic day for Michael. He would do 3-hour-long tastings with an hour of book signing in between each one.
Any chance Beer Hunter coming out on DVD?
Yeah, a slight possibility.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's very slight, but possibly.
This is a strange question, but I am very allergic to buckwheat.
I've been doing a little bit of filming with these guys to promote my Beer of the Month Club.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to put together a little documentary, so...
Because if I eat it, I'm dead.
I mean, dead or just...
I'm dead.
An uncomfortable thought.
Right.
Michael, we love Michael.
We love you.
And I'm a hard-working guy, you know. I mean, people say, what? You know, that's all you do? What's all I do? Drink beer. You drink beer for a living, that's all you do. Well, no, I mean, I drink whiskey as well.
Zooms right in!
I always sign it as M. Jackson. I never put Michael Jackson. It causes too much trouble.
All right. I think we're ready here. Michael, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
Malcolm, why do you call your website Beer Hunter?
Well, it had its origins in a TV show that I did quite a number of years ago, a very popular TV show. When we started filming the TV show, we didn't have a title for it. We were just calling it The Beer Project or something. One day I was doing a piece to camera in Amsterdam, outside the Heineken brewery, and I wanted to refer to having been in Amsterdam before, and I said, you know, the first time I ever came to this city as a beer hunter, and when I said that, the director laughed. And I, yeah, John, would you please not fool around when I'm doing a piece to camera? You know? He said, you've just given us the title for the show, and the show became The Beer Hunter, and people have known me as a beer hunter ever since.
Michael's landmark television series The Beer Hunter was released on Channel 4 in the UK in 1989. It subsequently aired on the Discovery Channel in the U.S. during the early 90s. Written and hosted by Michael, the 6 half-hour episodes took beer lovers to Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Holland, California, and Great Britain. The show was a huge hit around the world and was translated and subtitled into several different languages. In typical Jacksonian fashion, the show was the first of its kind. Despite its global popularity, Michael was never able to convince a network to produce another season.
The first conversation I had with Michael, I think the thing that cemented our relationship was that I had gone to Yorkshire and imported this beer that he grew up with from the Samuel Smith Brewery. So he loved that idea and was surprised that anyone would do it, since they really didn't market it outside their own neighborhood of Yorkshire. I convinced both of them that the brewery and Michael that we should do a film about the Samuel Smith Brewery. It's a beautiful brewery. I conceived and wrote a script for a film that Michael would be starring in.
Wouldn't you say that that could have been an early inspiration for the Beer Hunter?
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was an early inspiration for the Beer Hunter, because at the time that we did that video, Michael had not done much video.
The last used raw material in a completely natural process is the watertight container for all the others, wood. The process is brewing, and this oak barrel contains 36 gallons of a naturally conditioned Yorkshire beer from Samuel Smith. Old Brewery Bitter in cask is a real ale that takes its name from the small independent family brewery where it is produced. It embodies all that is best in the history, craft, and traditions associated with beer brewed at the oldest brewery in Yorkshire. In Yorkshire, time moves slowly. A team of drays crosses the river bridge into the famous old brewing town of Tadcaster, 8 miles from York.
This is York. The train arriving on platform 9 is the 10:14 from London.
The historic city of York is the capital of Yorkshire, and this train is carrying a special passenger, a Yorkshireman whose life's work is delving into the mysteries of beer. His name is Michael Jackson.
How are you doing? Good to see you.
As the guest of Samuel Smith, he's on a sentimental journey back home. As Michael has said, when images of the city of York enter the mind's eye, they're usually accompanied by waves of nostalgia. Not so long ago, a Londoner would have had to travel 200 miles north to be sure of getting a pint of beer from Yorkshire's oldest brewery. Not so today. Its beers are known and available throughout the world, as Michael Jackson can testify.
I had a few pints of your beer in the Cheshire Cheese.
The reason for Michael's visit is to renew acquaintance with Tadcaster, its famous old brewery and its beers. Michael Jackson is a writer on beer. He's internationally recognized as one of the leading authorities on the beers of the world. His writings appear regularly in the United States in the columns of Playboy, Food and Wine, Travel and Leisure, and other specialist publications. His book, The World Guide to Beer, is a standard work. Michael tastes and tipples professionally. Today, Journey's End is the extraordinary little brewing town of Tadcaster.
Hello, Mike.
There's one for you to try.
Sam's Imperial Stout. Absolutely one of my favourites. Lovely, lovely stout, the Imperial Stout. It's got such a depth of fruitiness, almost a burnt fruitiness. It reminds me rather of the burnt fruitiness in Christmas cake, you know. It's a real celebration stout.
Well, in that case, let's celebrate your return to Yorkshire.
Well, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Actually, Alistair, I'm taking a bit of Yorkshire home with me.
There's nothing more memorable, as visitors to Tadcaster will tell you, than the sight of a pair of Shire horses decorated with brass, pulling a load-and dray of good Yorkshire beer to a village pub.
The Welsh poet Dylan Thomas wrote a play called Under Milkwood, and he has a sea captain sitting, lying in his hammock, thinking of all of his past comrades at sea, and they all come back to him and talk to him, and one of them says, in a Welsh accent, "Oh, I came to a sticky end in Nantucket, most enjoyable." Well, if I come to a sticky end from eating so much cheese and drinking so much of Tommy Arthur's beer, I should have enjoyed it. I'm not getting maudlin here, I'm just reacting against abstinence and don't eat this and don't eat that and make your life a total misery because everything that you enjoy is bad for you. Making your life a total misery is bad for you. Eating and drinking things you enjoy makes you happy. Let's not forget that. Moderation's all right so long as it's in moderation. It's just so complex. I could just go on exploring this beer all afternoon. I know I keep saying that. I'm probably trying to drop a hint here somewhere, but I really enjoy sharing my pleasures with other people, and I hope you enjoy Tommy Arthur's beer. And stinking Bishop cheese if you can get some. Cheers, Tommy. It's about time I went to San Diego. I haven't been there for years.
Yeah, get in there.
So how long have you been brewing?
I've been brewing professionally about 8 years. I'm 7 at this location. I started here in May of 1997.
Yeah, we're just going to go through the brewery and sort of show you what we're up to today. We're actually brewing a batch of beer today, so we're going to walk out here. I guess you have to be very careful. Hold on, let me get the hose out of the way here.
This is the closest I've ever seen beer being pulled to the vessel it was actually made in. What are some of the most extreme beers?
Some of the most extreme beers that we made are obviously the Cuvée was something that was inspired by some of the sour beers of Belgium, and it's a barrel-aged strong beer with the different Brettanomyces strains and the sour cherries, and it's barrel-aged.
So if somebody went through all three of you, how many beers could they take?
With this location having about 12 beers, the San Clemente location has about 8 beers, and Carlsbad typically runs 10 to 12 beers, so we're looking in the neighborhood of 30 different beers.
At any one time?
At any one time, you know, at our restaurants.
Right. Okay. I need to take a leave.
We're going to have a portobello risotto right there. And then I haven't started cooking the steak yet, but hopefully this will be done in time. But it's a stuffed cabbage. And then on that grill, we're going to cook a Kobe style tenderloin. It's the best steak there is.
Pros.
Cheers.
À votre santé. Okay, let's eat something.
Let me go tell the man.
It was a great day. The owner, Vince, put on just an amazing spread in honor of Michael's visit, and it was a real special day at Pizza Port.
So here we are at Port Brewing, Lost Abbey in San Marcos, Beer Mecca, Tommy Arthur. Going to wrap up our interview with Tommy from 8 years ago with Michael, and it'll be interesting to see how Port Brewing has grown in those 8 years since we last interviewed Tommy Arthur.
Abbey.
So here at Port Brewing in the Lost Abbey, we have a very interesting thing going on. You can't really tell behind me, but our tasting bar butts up right into the brewery. And in fact, in order for us to get our forklift in and out of the brewing environment, we have to drive it right through the tasting room. Our tasting room is a big part of what we do here, and it's interesting because it does get right up into the brewing environment. You can see it, you can smell it, you can almost taste the beer we're making at any given time. It's very unique in that regard. It's also a lot like what used to happen in Solana Beach, and I'm sure that if Michael were here today, he'd be looking around going, this reminds me a lot of when I was in Solana Beach.
Back in 2004, when Michael came to Pizza Port in Solana Beach, which was our first location, so I already have fond memories of the beginning of that. I just remember my daughter sticking out her finger and he grabbed it, and we have a really cool picture of that. And just seeing him with my daughter and seeing him in a totally different light outside of beer was a really magical experience for me. I'll never forget that day as long as I live.
My next trip with Michael was to Belgium. This is the country that really opened his eyes to the diversity of beer. Michael often said that most people in Belgium didn't even know that they had so many beers in their own country.
Okay, so here we are in the city of Antwerp. It's the second biggest city in Belgium, and it's in the northern part of the country, the region of Flanders. The first time I ever came to Belgium, I'd been briefly living in the Netherlands, so I just crossed the border from the north, and so Antwerp was actually the first city in Belgium that I ever visited. And I came here and went in a bar and had a beer, and it was a De Koning beer, and it was just an astonishing beer. I just never tasted a beer quite like that before. And I had a Duvel and I had a Westmalle Triple, and I was just blown away by these beers. That's 30 years ago, 30 years of beer hunting in Belgium and writing about the beers. A Belgian beer lover once wrote in a book that I had introduced the Belgians to their own beers, and that's a flattering idea that I might have done that.
In 1991, Michael published his second most influential book on beer, The Great Beers of Belgium. Like the World Guide, it became an instant classic. Never before had the diversity of Belgian beers been described in such detail. The book earned Michael an award from the Crown Prince of Belgium for his service to Belgian beers and breweries.
Cheers. Prost.
Michael was also the first non-brewer to be inducted into the Ancient Guild of Belgian Brewers.
Belgium's a beer paradise. I discovered it for myself a long time ago, and I spent a lot of time sharing my enthusiasm.
Terwijl u moest wachten daar juist, heeft u al kunnen proeven van de koolbringswam?
Earlier on I was urging you to defend your traditions, but this is not a philosophy of looking backwards. It's a philosophy of looking forwards. That's why I mentioned the young Americans trying to out-Belgium Belgians. You know, there are new beers being created all the time that are really upholding these traditions.
The next day, we were back in London for more tastings at the Andover Arms.
Okay, ready to rock and roll?
Ready to rock and roll. Over Arms.
We're going to the brewery this afternoon.
Are you? Oh, lovely. Lovely.
Yeah, I'm seeing John.
John, yeah, at work.
I like down-home food as much as anything, especially when I'm down home. And right now I am down home because I'm in my local. I'm in my local pub, which is all of 4 minutes walk from my house. I'm going to have a really down-home meal here. I'm going to have British bangers, fried eggs, and fries. I'm having something a bit different with them today. This is a new beer made specially for the club. I was mentioning U Fleku in Prague. This is from the Herald Brewery, which is a few miles north of Prague. No, it's not. It's a few miles south of Prague, isn't it? It was one of the first or the second, I think, brewery to revive the wheat beer tradition in the Czech Republic. About time I made another visit to Bohemia. It's a very beautiful brewery.
Yeah, definitely.
And very typical Czech. Yeah.
The Herald Brewery has been here for over 500 years. It is in every way an old-fashioned traditional brewery.
So we spend anywhere from $400 to $800 a week on coal.
The brewery is powered almost entirely by coal. Water is sourced from springs right next to the brewery. Local barley is grown 2 kilometers away, and they also use the local Saaz hops, which the region is famous for.
Okay, let's go here into the Sladovna. Okay, watch your step.
The brewery even has its own maltings, a rarity these days.
It's very local.
Yeah.
Local water, local barley.
The malted barley is dried upstairs in large rooms, then transferred down to the brew kettle.
I believe it makes a huge difference.
But a lot of people use
From the brewing level, we continued down to the lagering vessels in the basement.
Oh, isn't that beautiful, eh? A cauliflower head.
Yeah.
As opposed to a cauliflower ear.
This is our dark 13 degree. We cooked this yesterday. A to je co? To je 12. So this is our 12 degree.
Australia.
This is actually what we have a lot of interest in the UK for this beer, but they're not wanting to sell it as a lager, for instance, but rather as an ale or as just a sports beer.
Don't let them do that.
It's amazing.
Just tell them to fuck off. You mustn't let them call it an ale when it's not an ale.
No. I told them they can't call it an ale because it's not an ale. You can't do that.
Well, looking at this beer, I'm going to guess what we've got here is a wheat beer.
Yes. Yes.
When I first started visiting this country, you sure wouldn't have been able to sell a cloudy beer like this. It has a really soft, delicious malt character.
Michael was very generous with his time. Even though we had to be back in Prague for a press conference that afternoon, Michael tasted through every single one of their beers, which of course made us late. Again.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very sorry to have kept you waiting so long. I really apologize for that. I was down at the Herald Brewery, taking a look around there, and you know how it is when you go to a brewery, it always takes a bit longer than you think it will.
Michael was delighted that the Czech press took such an interest in his appearance. He was always worried about becoming irrelevant, and I think this was a really special moment for him. But the evening was far from over. We still had 2 more tastings and a pub crawl ahead of us.
Devilish. Well, we always have to be a little naughty when we make beer. So.
That's a very Belgian approach to things, isn't it?
Yes.
Of course, you and I know that it was once quite normal for women to be brewers, excepting that they were called brewsters.
Yes.
But less common these days.
Yeah. In the Middle Ages, making beer was a part of the housekeeping.
Yes.
And now it's strange when a woman drinks beer. You see people looking strange, and but it's quite normal that women make beer and that they taste it and that they drink it. They should do it more.
So what have we got up here? We have a selection here.
Well, you know, the owners of this place, my partners, are true experts in brewing and malting industry, and this is why they experiment a lot.
Well, let's start off with one that's not too strange, and maybe we can.
Not too strange. Well,
I would in a strange direction.
I would say this one, and it's sour cherry flavored.
It's quite restrained. The fruitiness is not overwhelming.
This is our coffee beer, and it's also one of the most popular with our customers.
So can I get some toast and scrambled eggs and a glass of orange juice in a morning paper with this?
One of the strangest beers we have put on in our offer. And this is nettle beer, or maybe for Americans, poison ivy.
So this will poison me and I'll have to go to hospital?
No, definitely not.
I think we're celebrating your success with this, aren't we?
Our next stop was the famous Golden Tiger Pub.
Special beer, Tiger by Tiger.
Special beer.
I should know that.
Scottish crawl.
Do you want to crawl? A little pub crawl?
The Golden Tiger Pub only serves one kind of beer, Pilsner Urquell.
Very tender.
They prepare for the food and that's it. Yeah.
And of course, after dinner, a trip into the 700-year-old cellar is in order.
Oh, we have another table there.
Yeah. And this bit is filtered, but it's
yes, this is filtered on pasteurized. Not pasteurized. Not pasteurized. Yes.
And you have this in about 100 cafes, 100 bars.
We have in 375 pubs there. They have this system.
So we're in one of the most famous pubs in Prague. It's a very famous literary pub, especially associated with Bohumil Hrabal, who was the most famous contemporary author until his death fairly recently. It's a pub that the first president of the Czech Republic, Václav Havel, who was also a writer, a playwright, brought Bill Clinton here. And I have to say I've been here many times myself, but not very recently. Apparently it's 14 years was the last time.
It was getting late, but we still had one more stop to make.
There's a boxer and a fighter by his trade and a
This is Pivovica. It's a distilled beer that's been distilled twice into a hard, well, not a hard alcohol, but a clear alcohol. But it's beer. 50% alcohol. it's really good.
Who are you and where are we?
This is the Market of Sod. This is in Prague. It's my pub, and it used to be a giant brothel, and now it's just a regular nightclub, built in 1912. I've been here for 12 years, and my landlord just got arrested, so, you know, it's, we're having fun. No.
There's a car down there.
Can you give me the car? Oh, gosh, it's mine. Oh, that's pointless. All right.
What did we do at the time? He would like now to present you
Thank you so much, man. I wish that really felt bad that we weren't here for a little longer time. Thanks so much.
But old breweries, you know, the breweries.
We left poor Michael to the wolves that night and caught a midnight train to Italy.
You know, when Michael would interview and take notes about, write about, learn about the people that were producing the beers that he was interested perhaps in reviewing for a magazine article or featuring in the Rare Beer Club, interestingly, the beer actually was always last. It was the family history. It was what that person was about, what their passions were, why they brewed, and why they cared to do what they did. What they loved in music, just all sorts of things that would give him an insight to the character of the person. That was first, that was foremost. Beer was almost kind of an afterthought after that.
I met up with Michael again a few months later for a brief but wonderful trip to Ireland. Our tour began on the scenic West Coast.
Well, I've got a pint of the black stuff here. A really delicious Irish dry stout, but it's not made in Dublin. It's made in County Clare, in a little village called Ina. We're at Biddy Early's pub, I'm so glad to be here. You know, I've really wanted to come here and taste the beer in situ. How did this place start, and why is it called? Why do you have the name Biddy?
Well, this pub has been in my family since 1983, and it's a small rural pub, as you saw on your way here. It's quite a remote location. We have a phrase that we put on our literature: "Taste the supernatural." Our brewery is named after a witch, Biddy Early. So
yes,
it ties in with that, and we'll come back to her.
So was Biddy a local witch around here?
She was. She lived about 20 miles from here, but she used to travel. She used to stop in this pub on her travels. It was a much smaller, older pub in those days.
Very slow to happen in Ireland, wasn't it, the microbrewery movement?
Very. I mean, for the last 100 years, it has gone the wrong direction, from having breweries in every town, where we ended up to having just 3 breweries in the country, all of them multinational companies with, you could say, very little to do with Ireland at this stage.
So it's just wonderful to be able to taste a truly distinctive, truly local Irish beer made by the smallest brewery in Ireland. Very successful smallest brewery in Ireland, I think, and I'd really like to congratulate you and your family for having succeeded with this and brought something to County Clare and to Ireland that is, I think, a wonderfully welcome innovation. Let me say cheers to you. Slán.
Thank you. Slán, Michael.
The next morning, Neil gave us a tour around County Clare.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Call again.
We'll see you again soon.
By the end of the day, we were in Dublin.
Got a good pint of Guinness into you.
Well, we're in one of my great favourite cities of the world, Dublin, Ireland. A wonderful place for sociability, and a great deal of that sociability takes place in pubs. It's really impossible to come to Ireland without having a good time. The weather's not always great, but if the weather's not great, all the more reason for staying in the pub. And if you go into a pub in Ireland and you order a pint, it's going to be a matter of minutes before somebody engages you in conversation, and who knows where that might lead. I'm going to just take a quick look around some of my favourite pubs in Dublin in the next few minutes. It's not so much a pub crawl as a race around the pubs of Dublin.
And just over here on the right hand side is our Mulligan's. This is Grafton Street, Trinity College on the left hand side, founded by Queen Elizabeth, 15th, 16th century.
Sometimes when you've had a few drinks, it's quite reassuring to have a lamppost to cling to. This is one of my favourite lampposts because it's outside Davy Byrne's, which is, I think, one of the first Dublin pubs that I ever drank in. It's a literary pub. Actually, every pub in Dublin is a literary pub. Every pub in Dublin, some famous writer drank there. I don't think I'll ever qualify as a famous writer at Davy Byrne's, but I still have an affection for the place.
We're just heading down towards the Brazenhead pub, Dublin's oldest pub, and it's reported that it has its own ghost, although the only spirit I've ever seen in there was Irish whiskey. Well,
I have to say that my real favourite stout in Ireland these days is a porterhouse. That's a brew pub in Parliament Street. I'm with the owner of the porterhouse, Oliver Hughes.
How are you, Michael?
I'm great. It's great to be here and having some of your beers. How long have we been doing this now? How long have you been here?
We opened our first bar in 1989, but as a brewery here, we opened in 1996.
I always have difficulty with your beers. The difficulty I have with them is I like them all so much. I never know which one to order or which one
That is a compliment.
I will tend to go through the 3 of these, certainly. Whole oysters.
Whole oysters. And we have oysters in our bars.
See, I always I always think I can taste the oysters. I'm never really sure because I know they're there, so maybe I'm being suggestive. You know, but it has that wonderfully savoury, slightly salty, slightly gamey sort of tang. Incredibly appetising beer, I think.
It's a very smooth beer.
I once had half a dozen oysters and only 5 of them worked. But, you know, that's what happens sometimes.
I'm very fortunate, very lucky that I love my work.
Well, we're very fortunate that you love your work and do your work and allow us to love your beer. So, I haven't got any diseases, so you can pick up one of those and do a slauncher.
Slauncher.
Slauncher. Cheers.
Michael wisely went to bed that night, but Oliver and the crew from the Porterhouse entertained us into the wee hours of the morning.
Oh, you're saying we'll leave breakfast in a scant 2.5 hours.
Huh? For 3.
2.5 hours, 3?
What Michael said about having a good time in Ireland was true. I met up with Michael about a month later for an epic mid-Atlantic tour, starting at one of his favorite little breweries, Dogfish Head.
Today I'm in Delaware, heading for Sussex County for a little place called Milton, which is where Sam Calagione has his famous Dogfish Head brewery. It's a very, very small brewery, and it makes some outstandingly big, eccentric beers. I'm sure looking forward to tasting whatever is Sam's latest creation.
It's about, it's equal time. What's up, guys? JR, how you been?
Good.
My wife Mariah, really the brains behind the brawn here at the brewery. Matt being the brawn. You got to have the tour with us, lowly salespeople. But tonight we drink with the real stars, the rock stars, the brewers.
Do salespeople know anything about beer? I mean, beer salespeople never do they? Well, the Dogfish Head is in Maine or Massachusetts?
Maine.
Maine. Okay. And the original brew pub is in Rehoboth Beach,
which we'll be at tonight.
And the original micro was in Lewis.
Exactly.
But we're now in Milton, is that right?
I'm still confused. So this is our second best-selling beer now, overtook Raison d'Etre. I'll take one too. And
what's the alcohol content on
9%, 90 IBUs, boils for 90 minutes.
So JR, you've seen the Beer and Benevolence up there? And,
yeah, I do. That's our mission statement. Probably the only brewery in the country with a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote as a mission statement.
Probably the most verbal brewery in the country. You know, it's a literary brewery, which you know, that's fine. That's very much a part of beer tradition too.
I was the only brewer for the first year. I used to brew 2 or 3 times a day, 5 or 6 days a week on this little system. Now, granted, we weren't distributing yet, so we were only producing beer for our own pub. That's when we started grabbing ingredients from our kitchen and saying, let's try apricots or pumpkins. And I'm proud to say I'm the least talented brewer that is on our staff. So these guys manage the big batches, and I get to have fun with the small experimental batches.
I suppose they can't really stand your creativity around the place.
No, they're not allowed to. And from here, we're going to head out to Lewis, again, Sussex County, but in the States, where we're going to go to the Dogfish Room. You're basically christening the Dogfish Head Room at the Inn at Canal Square in Lewis.
With holy water, though, to be beer, right?
Yeah, the priests are waiting outside with the holy water.
Okay.
It's a non-denominational event.
Good.
We're heading down to the Inn at Canal Square, where Michael's going to be the person that christens the Dogfish Room at the Inn at Canal Square. It's a very unique...
It can't be very unique. It's either unique or it's not.
It's a little bit unique.
No, I can't. No degrees.
It's quasi-unique.
Remember,
it's just unique.
We don't have marketing bullshit in this.
Okay, that's right. Just unique. Nice.
Where are we going?
We're going right up there, that room overlooking the harbor.
Our final stop for the evening was at the original brew pub in Rehoboth to have dinner with the brewers. Everybody dug deep into their beer stash for Michael that night.
Bring up some 120 this year's vintage. So it's a 3-year-old, the world's strongest IPA. We're not a brewery that's really good at keeping beers back. Oh, this is about a year old, a little older than that, closer to 2 years old. A year and a half. Year and a half. Festina Lente, brewed with peaches from Oregon, Washington.
There you go.
This is 8-year-old Dextro. But this is the oldest beer of the night. We only have 12 ounces of it, so let's do some sharing. And I'm going with the joke. I'm laughing inside as I'm saying.
So far as most people simply don't know that there's an interesting beer made in America, and I've been, banging on about this for years, but to no effect whatever, really.
I'd like to drink this last one and make a toast. So this one is a testament, Michael, to what you've helped us accomplish in America as small breweries. So this is one that we're real proud of, and it's one that you inspired.
Well, thanks for making it.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Cheers!
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
When I'm researching beer, I really get by with the help of my friends. I'm with Gary Monterosso, who's a beer writer in the Mid-Atlantic region, fellow beer writer, and Mark Haney. We three of us always travel together for a few days at this time of year, so I'm really looking forward to wherever we're going next. I'm not quite sure where we're going next, so I guess I better ask Gary. Gary?
And that's right, Mark. Thank you. Well, as you know, this is the 5th year that we've been doing this, and we certainly welcome you to our area again.
5 years already?
5 years already. And with my friend Mark Haney, we are in Delaware, as you mentioned right now. We're going to be hitting 2 locations, exploring some of the fine American beers. We're going to be starting in Bear, Delaware, at a little place called Stewart's. And then from there, we're going to travel into Philadelphia, Yards Brewing, 2 award-winning breweries. And I think we have a great day today.
Yeah, I remember going to Stewart's once before. It has a slightly Scottish theme.
Very much, yeah. And
Scottish name, of course.
Got a remarkable barley one we want you to try today also.
Because we got that in the tasting.
We're going to do that in the tasting this year, exactly.
Yeah, at the university.
That's it.
Yeah, and Yards, I remember Yards when they started out in Manioc.
That's right, started in Manioc. I believe they're about 10 or 11 years old right now, and it's a remarkably successful company, so we're looking forward to visiting them as well.
Well, that's great. I'm really looking forward to it, and let's see what they've got in store for us.
We're on our way.
Okay, off for a beer or two.
Come a long way in 10 years. We started out, first time he was here, we had 4 house drafts, and that was it. And now we make somewhere in the 30 to 32 beer range, which is nice.
Your customers don't get confused with so many beers.
They might.
Sometimes the very biggest of cities find it difficult to have the sort of local pride that really works well for local products like local beers. But a city that's big enough to provide a market but small enough to have local pride, that's the perfect place to have a small brewery. Philadelphia is a good city for local pride. They're proud of all sorts of things. They're proud of Philadelphia cheesesteaks, for example. They're proud of Philadelphia pretzels. And they never quite forgot their pride in their local beer. So it's good to be here and be able to taste beers from Philadelphia breweries like a brewery called Yards. That's a really good brewery, making rather English-style beers. Extra special ale.
Yep, it's the beer we've been doing since the very beginning.
You could just keep them coming, really, Tom. Did I say that? I probably did, yeah. Little hazelnut crunch.
Yeah. We do a single decoction mash.
Right. I like this white brick. It's
It's fire brick. Brew kettle.
Right.
And hot liquor tank.
Oh, hot liquor tank. Yeah.
Nice. I forgot to ask it away, but you're good. You are natural.
I love newspapers.
Newspaper journalists specializing in food, or no?
No, it's originally a hard news journalist.
Really?
And later on did quite a bit of foreign reporting and...
Less than 30, stand by.
Okay. I'm back again with Judy Fay, the executive producer of the KitchenAid Book and the Cook, and of course, beer expert Michael Jackson. And Connie, you know what I was saying earlier to Michael? If there was a TV show called The Best Jobs in the World to profile people who have really cool jobs, you'd be one of them.
Would be, yeah. I'm not complaining.
There are seats up front. There are about 6 seats right up here. Okay, 2 seats right up front. 2 people want to come right up front? So, without any further ado, please join me in welcoming, and I want to say this is the 15th beer tasting with Michael Jackson. Please give him a very special welcome this year.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 15 years, 15 straight years. And the biggest event in the Book and the Cook for each of those 15 years. Biggest event in terms of the biggest attendance. Also the hardest day's work of my year every year, because you're going to be here, thank you. You're going to be here once this afternoon. I'm going to be up here 3 times doing this afternoon. And believe me, doing this 3 times is quite tough.
The next evening was Michael's annual beer dinner at the legendary Monk's Cafe.
This evening we just had a dinner with Michael Jackson. It was vintage Belgian ales paired with current version of the same ales. Our chef Adam Glickman prepared a brand new menu just for this event, and it was really an amazing dinner. We had a 1999 Chimay Ground Reserve paired with a 2005 Chimay Ground Reserve. We had a 1996 Cantillon Goose, which was ethereal. It was really a lot of fun. We do it every year with Michael. This is our 7th year of doing it. And the event sold out, as it always does every year. It's like a rock concert. They sell out within hours of going on sale, literally. The phones ring off the hook.
All right. Thank you very much.
The next day, we were back on the road heading towards Washington, D.C. for another annual event, a tasting at the National Geographic Society.
We couldn't do this event without our sponsors, and once again, we're very privileged to have the sponsorship of the Brickskeller and DA's RFD, Regional Food and Drink, as well. Okay, now the man who has brought us all here together tonight, he's known by many names: the Beer Hunter, the Maven of Malt, the Whiskey Chaser. Over the last 10 years of beverage tastings at the Geographic, we've come to know him simply as Michael. We're very proud of what is now a decade-long association with the man who is very simply the world's foremost writer on beer and whiskey.
Michael wasn't just known as the world's most respected beer writer. His other passion was whiskey, which he considered simply a form of distilled beer. He was equally famous, and some say more so, for his writing about whiskey and single malt scotch.
I always feel there's a little taste of the forest in the whiskey.
In 1987, 10 years after the World Guide to Beer, Michael published the World Guide to Whiskey. It quickly became the world's best-selling book on the subject. It was followed by the Complete Guide to Single Malt Scotch, Scotland and Its Whiskies, the Malt Whiskey Companion, and in 2005, his definitive guide entitled Whiskey. According to his publisher, most of Michael's income came from sales of his whiskey books, not his beer books.
Is he rolling? This rather dark brick-lined cellar in Washington, D.C. It's called the Brix Keller, and it's really a shrine for beer lovers. It was one of the very first bars in the country to try and assemble a really large number of beers from all over the US. It's been in 3 generations of the family, and it's being run now by Dave Alexander, who's with me right now. Dave, when did it all start?
It started in 1957 with my father-in-law Maurice Koja and his father Felix Koja. They opened with 36 beers in 57.
And when did the numbers really begin to climb?
Someone suggested that they should have a beer from every state for the bicentennial, so they took that as a personal challenge. And that was their mission, but they didn't get it. They had Missouri, Mississippi. I can never remember which.
Missouri wasn't dry because there's quite a big brewery in Missouri, I think.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, yes, Mississippi, right. So that's what really got us started, was the challenge to have a beer from every state for the bicentennial. We consider it an institution, and if you've ever spent any time in an institution, you know what we're talking about.
Okay, let's just talk a little bit about your new place. You have a new place. The new place has a very curious name, RFD.
We wanted to get into doing tap beers and, like I said, more aggressive cooking. So we basically put a place out that is everything the Brix Keller is not, where the Brix Keller is low ceiling and dark brick-lined walls. The RFD is big high ceilings and open kitchen and a very, very nice tap setup over there. We just put a nitrogen extractor in too, so we're producing our own nitrogen.
Well, we're going to have a tasting there tonight. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, as am I.
That evening, we headed to Dave's other establishment, RFD, for a tasting with 12 regional brewers.
But he's also influenced wide numbers of audiences. Michael's very modest about this. He says he has a small niche audience. He doesn't. He has the largest beer audience that can imagine. Almost anybody who likes good beer knows of Michael Jackson. Just the quality of writing, the thing I always come back to, is when people say, what do I do to learn about beer? I say, step 1, buy any book by Michael Jackson. But better yet, buy all the books by Michael Jackson and just sit down and read them. The use of language, the depth of knowledge that comes through is so rich and so deep. It continues just to be a pleasure to read through. And so, Michael, we're honored to have you here tonight. Thanks for being here at RFD.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. I have to say in the nicest possible way that I'm always embarrassed by your intros because they are so kind and so excessively kind, I think. It's a style of beer that I've only really encountered there, and it's dangerously drinkable.
It is dangerously drinkable. It's one of the things we really try to focus on.
Michael sat up on that stage for close to 3 hours that night. It was the end of a long, wonderful road trip. I could never have imagined it would be the last trip I ever took with him.
He had in his briefcase half a dozen bottles of the latest Sierra Celebration, and he sort of slipped it to me, sort of like this. Everybody in the lounge was watching. Some sort of drug deal was going on. Well, it kind of was.
Michael kept a grueling work schedule, but his health continued to decline. A 2006 appearance on the Conan O'Brien Show was particularly disastrous. People started to accuse him of being drunk.
I knew that he wasn't drunk. I mean, I was with him the whole day leading up to his appearance on Conan O'Brien, and spent the entire time with him. He hadn't drunk anything, and yet, you know, his meds weren't working right, and he was, I mean, that was the word after the experience. I mean, it wasn't a good one on Conan.
I didn't know he was sick. I thought, like many people, that he was aging a little, as we all do, and if we're lucky, and that maybe he was tasting more than he should some days.
Really, the entire time that I knew Michael, he drank less than virtually anybody at the table on any given night.
And the minute I saw him, when he walked into the Craft Brewers Conference, I looked at Charles and I said, honey, there's something wrong with Michael. I think he's got Parkinson's or MS or something, but that twitch is not, you know, that's not from overconsumption.
In September of 2006, just after the Great American Beer Festival in Denver, Michael suffered a heart attack. Not long after the incident, Michael finally revealed that he was suffering from Parkinson's.
The irony is Michael had Parkinson's for probably the entire time I knew him. And he didn't ever tell anybody.
I think that his reasons for hiding it were numerous. You know, one, he was a tough, proud Yorkshireman. You know, people think of him as this sort of professional Englishman, but he comes from pretty hard people, and showing weakness of any sort, I think in that situation didn't sit well with him. Also, I think he had a natural fear that anybody who works in media or whatever else would have, is that if people find out that you're ill, they may not give you certain assignments or whatever else because they don't think that you're going to be able to do it.
After going public with his disease, Michael came up with the idea of writing a completely different kind of book.
He told me he had Parkinson's on the telephone. I was stunned, and then he told me about his book. He said, I'm going to write a book, or I'm writing a book about Parkinson's. And I was thrilled, and I told him that I was thrilled because I said, you can make fantastic books.
The book, when he really started thinking about it, the whole concept of, I mean, he called me one day and said, I know the name of this book now. It's I'm Not Drunk. And I said, my God, that's phenomenal.
And actually in the back of my mind ever since has been the question, how would he illustrate a book about Parkinson's? I know he would have. Michael was a genius with illustrations.
It seemed that Michael had begun a new chapter of life. His health was improving. He had fallen in love. He had a new book in the works.
I remember one time at a dinner he and I had in April of 2007, which was an amazing dinner, probably the most amazing dinner he and I ever shared for so many reasons. But we had talked about the idea of us putting together this funding for this book so that he could take a year and write this book and do nothing else, which would have been, I think, cathartic for him. I think it would have been a game changer.
Yeah, the last trip that I had with Michael, I was on my way back from a wine trip to the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, actually, and I stopped through Belgium for Beer Passion 2007. It was late June 2007. Michael was doing really, really well, better than I'd seen him in 3 years.
And for the whole night, we talked about our business, we talked about where things were going. But really what was dominating was this talk about this book, this new book that he was ready to write. And Michael was really believing at that point, that this book could make a difference. And he was really enthused about writing the book. It was amazing. And that was the best night, I think, I ever had with Michael, which was also the last night.
Then suddenly, on the morning of August 20th, 2007, came the news that would shock the entire world of beer. Michael Jackson had passed away at his home in London.
The world was never going to be the same again. That was the feeling on the day. I couldn't quite believe what had happened, and that's pretty much still the way I feel. He left us too early.
And we attended Michael's funeral in London, and the reception at the Fuller's Brewery after the funeral, and that was very sad in many ways, but heartwarming in others, because we recognized how many people he had affected in a positive way.
I knew that, just kind of had that feeling at the time of learning of his death that, wow, there's never going to be another Michael Jackson. Taken a tour of small breweries in the southwestern United States, traveling 2,300 miles, talking and visiting many some of America's smallest brewers, nano brewers, micro brewers, small brew pubs and small communities. And I think they're very reflective of what's happening throughout the United States and what Michael Jackson once dreamt about. And boy, every March, end of March, I think of Michael, and because it's his birthday. I have it on my calendar, and it's never going to get off my calendar, because I'll always remember him. I just wish he was around to see what he had been involved in the early stages. I just wish he could see what's happening these days. I think he would be, words can't explain it, proud, happy. He would be probably blown away if we could come back and see how far we've come. But still, we're only 5.5%, and there's a lot more to come. And there's going to be maybe there's 20,000 brands of craft beer out there. There's going to be 20,000 little tremors, and that's gonna move the needle.
Okay, so here we go. We're leaving our home here in Sun Valley, Idaho, and heading all the way down to San Diego, California, for the Craft Brewers Conference, culminating in the World Beer Cup as well. We're going to talk to brewers from all over the world about Michael, about beer, and it's going to be a great trip.
I'm Nancy Johnson. I'm the event director for the Brewers Association. We're here in San Diego at the 2012 Craft Brewers Conference and Brew Expo America. It's about 4,000 brewers from around the world with a lot of exhibitors, all industry, and we're looking to have a great week.
I have no doubts about continued success.
American craft brewers will grow to producing 10% of all beer enjoyed in the United States by the year 2017.
And each person in this room is part of evolving what today is a $95.5 billion overall beer industry, literally contributing to 1.5% of our gross domestic product.
Beer is the best-selling adult beverage in the country, and that is a beautiful thing.
What's the best part of being in this craft brewing community? Tim Hanna shares from Tuckahoe Brewing. The best part is just that, the community itself.
Journalism's loss has been the brewing industry's gain, Steve. In our community, which you have helped to build, you are definitely one of the good guys.
So I'd like to toast. I see Paul dated the beginning of the craft brewing industry at 1965. So let's toast the first 47 years of craft beer and the next 47 years of craft beer, and a special tribute to Michael Jackson. Cheers.
The Brew Expo America trade show is now open. Have a great conference.
Hello, I'm Greg Cook, CEO and co-founder of the Stone Brewing Company and Stone Brewing World Bistro and Gardens, and we're here at the beautiful Town & Country Resort in San Diego, California for the 2012 Craft Brewers Conference. Cheers. And also, I think actually, maybe even more importantly, I'm here to share some words, some thoughts, and maybe even a story about somebody who's very important to all of us, Michael Jackson. I, like many folks, had some of my very first beer experiences. No, I'm not talking about just the generic beer experience, but you know, understanding that beer was more what it could be, the world of beer, the depth of beer that was out there, at the hand of Michael Jackson and his work.
I think a lot of people don't realize exactly how important Michael was to everything that's happening here today at the Craft Brewers Conference. I mean, basically, I'm sure that we would have a craft brewing industry if Michael hadn't been here. I think it would look really, really different. And I don't think it would be nearly as rich, nearly as big, or not nearly as much fun.
It's been a few years since Michael passed, and I think there's a lot of us that wish he was here today. The success of craft brewing is through the moon right now, and I don't think any of us could have sat down and had a pint with Michael, even in his last days, and sort of posited that what we were doing and what we were a part of and what he'd been a part of was going to lead up to this.
You know, I'm actually, yeah, I got goosebumps. You know, that's the kind of visceral reaction I have when I think about Michael. And his importance and his relevance to this wonderful world of beer that we're in.
He always brought whatever was going on about beer back to people. And I think that, you know, if there's anything we can really learn from what he was trying to tell us, is that beer is people, beer is about people.
And that's part of life. Sometimes you don't get to meet your mentors, or sometimes you don't get to meet your heroes. But at the end of it, there's still people that laid that foundation. And so even though you're not here today, Michael, I think that we all celebrate and we toast your life. So cheers to what you helped us accomplish, cheers to what we're going to accomplish, and specifically to the people beyond us that are coming down the road. Make sure you understand what this man meant to craft beer.
I'd like to offer up a toast to Michael.
Cheers, Michael.
Cheers.
Cheers, Michael!
And here's to you, Michael Jackson.
Cheers, Michael Jackson.
That's what we think about Michael.
Cheers, Michael, and thanks, buddy.
I'm here to enjoy the beer, and I'm sure you are too. Cheers.
Good.
I'll do a quick cheers again. And
do another cheers. I can't have too many cheers. We get a little closer. And cheers.
You know, drinking beer is a sociable thing, and although we are separated at the moment by the Atlantic and the lens of the camera, I feel as though I'm with you now, just having this beer together with you. Perhaps we've met at some time in my 20 or 30 years of travelling around the US researching beer. So I'd like to raise a glass to you and say cheers. Should I also say it in Flemish and French? Flemish or French? Oh. Slanjiva and Lachaim. Maybe you can use that bit somewhere.
Nice.
He was such a visionary, and just the whole idea behind being a beer hunter. I mean, how cool is that? Like, what an awesome title. And it's just something I think everyone who's into craft beer aspires to be. You know, there's something carnal and visceral about being a beer hunter. You're going out and trying the unknown and looking for things actively, not just trying things that come across your way, is going out there and trying things at the source. And it's just been huge for me, and I think it's been huge for the craft beer movement as a whole. And I'll always raise a pint to Michael.
Well, I think, you know, I learned a lot from Michael Jackson early on in my discovery of beer. You know, he talked about, you know, and met with a lot of different brewers in the, you know, in the different cultures, and it was more of a travel sort of experience for him, not only to meet the people and the faces behind the beer, but also the landscape and the culture. And, you know, I brought that to my brewing because it adds another dimension, sort of a sixth sense, if you will, when you see beer, you know, taste beer, smell beer. Knowing the story behind it as well also adds a dimension that is often left out by a lot of brewers today.
I think it's safe to say that the modern beer drinker is enjoying the widest variety of beer that there's ever been, and they really have key figures like Michael Jackson to thank for that. Michael really dared to intellectualize beer. He dared to show people that beer was something more than a simple pale ale or lager. It really could be quite complex, it could be intricate, it could have nuances. And really through that passion, Michael has managed to inspire a new generation of brewers. Brewers who not only respected the quality of the beer they were making, but the variety as well. And in turn, this has really spurred on the international craft beer market. So not only countries like the USA, but Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Singapore. The craft beer market worldwide is producing some of the most unique and interesting beers that there's ever been today. And we really do have people like Michael Jackson to thank for that.
Cheers to the beer hunter.
Happy birthday, Michael Jackson, and salud.
Toasts, Michael Jackson.
Thanks for making the world where Raise Your Pints is awesome. Cheers, Michael Jackson.
So Michael, this is for you. Cheers, Michael Jackson. RYP.
Happy birthday and cheers to you.
Here's to you, Michael Jackson.
Thank you, Michael Jackson.
Cheers to you, Michael Jackson. Cheers, Michael Jackson.
Here's to the beer hunter.
Yeah, I'm not trying.
It's good.
Get that? But it was also a brewing capital. The first waves of settlers to the United States established their... fucking hell. You'll have to do a cutaway, I think. Gonna burp. So we just tested the beer for resonance, and
you should have heard that. It was so crisp and clear on the headphones. Oh, good. That's an outtake right there.
I'm sorry about that. Sorry, guys.
But they can't get in now.
Oh, yeah. Cheese was saying more logical things than I was.
Just in the last sentence.
And I grabbed a pint of... fuck it.
You can't do that.
Your
phone? Your phone?
Yeah.
Good Lord, Michael, your phone never rings.
That was
That was such a quick reaction.
Well, you know, which idiot's got his phone going?
Right.
I had the book and the cook drinking rum from Sam over here, Dogfish. Yes. It's outstanding.
What do you think about that rum?
I find it amusing in its character, but a little arrogant perhaps.
Yeah, all right.
Do we have a hot mic here? Excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's hot.
I'm not getting anything.
I think we need to gong you.
Slide out of your chair.
Well, I was going to fall asleep, you know. There's a British comedy show where a guy sits in a leather chair and he's incredibly drunk, and he's like this old guy with white hair, and he's very posh, and he just talks nonsense. And, yeah, totally drunk, of course.
Did you get that? I got some of that.
Am I like one of those milk cows? Maybe I should just say that. I'll do that again, okay? Have I got it on my mustache at the moment?
Nope.